Picture a winter road in rural New Hampshire, the kind that goes dark early and stays dark. No storefront glow, no steady traffic, just snow, trees, and the thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through it all. Now picture this. A car slides off that road and ends up stuck. A few minutes pass, someone sees the driver, speaks to her briefly, then, before police can even arrive, she's gone. Not walked away and later called, not found a ride and checked in. Gone, as in no confirmed sighting, no verified contact, no proven trail that ever leads to her again. That's the core of the Maura Murray mystery. On Monday, February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray, 21 years old, a nursing student, was driving a black Saturn four-door sedan when the vehicle left Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, and became stuck. The roads in that part of northern New Hampshire were snow-covered. When police arrived at the crash scene, Maura was not there, and she has not been seen or heard from since. Earlier that day, one of the last confirmed snapshots comes from surveillance. According to the FBI, Maura was last seen on surveillance footage at an ATM, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. After that, the timeline turns into a narrowing corridor that leads to Route 112, then into a black hole of minutes. Route 112 in that area is not an interstate and not a well-lit boulevard. It's a stretch of road where a crash can happen without a crowd forming around it, especially in winter, especially at night, especially if snowfall and cold keep people indoors. The FBI describes the conditions plainly: snow-covered roads in northern New Hampshire. That matters because snow changes everything: visibility, stopping distance, the likelihood of sliding, the speed at which you get cold if you're outside, and how easy it is to leave or hide tracks. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Maura's Saturn left Route 112 and became stuck. From an investigative standpoint, this should have been a clean starting point: a fixed location, a fixed vehicle, and a narrow time window. In many cases, that's enough to produce a trail, footprints, witnesses, a camera, a call, something. But here it did the opposite. It created a stage, and then the main person vanished from it. Soon after the crash, someone saw and spoke to a woman believed to be Maura at the scene. That believed to be matters, because even the most repeated details still have to be treated as reported unless they're definitively confirmed. What stays consistent in the public record is simple. There was a short interaction at the scene, and then when law enforcement arrived, she was no longer there. So think about what that means in real life. A car is stuck off the road. The driver is present long enough to be noticed, long enough for a person to speak with her, and yet she disappears in the gap between that moment and the arrival of police. Not hours, minutes. When police arrived, Maura was not present, and no one at the scene could point to a clear, undeniable direction she went. The FBI's language is direct. She was not present at the crash scene when police arrived and has not been seen or heard from since. That's the moment the case becomes what it still is today: a puzzle defined by a vanishing point. Most disappearances that become famous have a long runway, a series of sightings, a pattern of phone activity, a confirmed argument, a suspicious figure, a final message, something that tells you the story is building toward a known edge. Maura's case feels different because the edge is so sharp. There is a last confirmed image, an ATM camera earlier that day. There is a last confirmed location, Route 112, around 7:30 p.m., snow on the roads, the Saturn stuck. There is a reported brief contact at the crash scene, and then there is nothing solid enough to close the circle. No verified, "I'm safe," no confirmed, "I left," no conclusive physical evidence that ends the question. Just a cold road, a stuck car, and a gap in time that has swallowed more than 2 decades. If you want more real cases like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. New true stories drop here all the time. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happened in those minutes after the crash? Did she walk into the woods? Did she get into a passing car? Or was it panic that changed everything? Drop your theory in the comments. Be specific. One detail you think matters most. And if you know any credible information about the case, report it to the proper authorities. In the hours before Maura Murray vanished, her day in Amherst looked, from the outside, like a young woman quietly rearranging her life for a short trip. Yet nothing about it was explained to the people who knew her best, and the reason she gave was not true. On Monday, February 9, 2004, Maura, then a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, told professors she would be away due to a family emergency, often reported as a death in the family, even though there was no such death. It was the kind of message that buys time, ends questions, and creates a clean gap on a calendar. New Hampshire Magazine. After sending those messages, she began making practical moves that suggested intent and planning rather than a spontaneous detour. She withdrew cash, including a widely reported $280 withdrawal captured on surveillance footage, and later that afternoon she was recorded buying alcohol. Ordinary, mundane actions that become ominous only because of what happens next. She also placed at least one call connected to lodging or travel inquiries, often cited as a brief call to a Stowe, Vermont tourism line. Another small breadcrumb that points toward the idea of a short getaway in northern New England, not a permanent disappearance. 107 degrees, Maura Murray. By late afternoon, she left Amherst in her black Saturn, driving north without clearly telling friends or family where she was going, and official summaries of the case emphasize that she did not share her destination in a way that later investigators could confirm. That lack of a stated plan is one of the reasons the timeline feels both tight and slippery. Tight because her last known movements are concentrated into a single day, slippery because the why is missing. Maura did not vanish in a vacuum. She vanished after a sequence of choices that, in isolation, look like preparation. Emails to clear obligations, cash to fund a short trip, alcohol bought quickly, a travel-related call. And yet those same choices can be read in completely different ways, depending on what someone already believes about the case. To one person, the emails and purchases look like an attempt to disappear voluntarily. To another, they look like the normal setup for a brief break that went catastrophically wrong. To another, they look like a young woman trying to manage stress privately, keep people from worrying, and get away for a night or two without explaining herself. What is beyond debate is the structural reality those steps created. She left a trace that is clear up to the moment she drove out of Amherst, and then the trace narrows to a single rural road in New Hampshire, where, at around 7:30 p.m., her car ended up off Route 112 and stuck in the snow. And after that, the story stops behaving like a normal travel day and starts behaving like a disappearance with a hard cutoff. That night, the timeline tightens until it becomes almost unbearable to look at, because it's made of ordinary moments that should have produced an ordinary outcome. Sometime after dark on February 9, 2004, Maura Murray's black Saturn ended up off Route 112 on Wild Ammonoosuc Road in Haverhill, New Hampshire, wedged against snow and facing the wrong way. It was the kind of single-vehicle crash that, in most stories, ends with a tow truck, an insurance call, maybe a citation, and a long, annoyed drive home. Instead, it became the last fixed point of her life. A local resident near the crash site noticed the car and called authorities at about 7:27 p.m., reporting a vehicle off the road near her home. In the minutes immediately after, a passing motorist, often identified in reporting as a local school bus driver, stopped and spoke with the driver. The exchange, as publicly repeated for years, was brief. The driver appeared shaken but upright, and she declined help, indicating that assistance had already been contacted. The crucial fact is not the exact wording of what she said, it's the structure of the moment. Someone was close enough to see her, close enough to speak with her, close enough to register that she was there, alive and interacting, Yet there was no prolonged conversation, no prolonged supervision, and no certainty about what she did immediately after. The witness then drove a short distance away and called police, and by the time law enforcement arrived, around 7:46 p.m., roughly 10 minutes after the initial call, Maura was gone. The Saturn remained. The road remained. The snow remained. The person who should have been standing beside the car was simply not present. This is the point where the story stops behaving like a normal accident response and starts behaving like a vanishing act. A stranded driver on a winter road should be the easiest person in the world to find, because there are only so many places they can go, especially in deep cold and darkness. Yet when the responding officer arrived, there was no driver visible on the roadway, no one sitting in the car, no one flagged down nearby. What remained was the scene itself, a vehicle that could be traced back to Maura, positioned in a way that suggested a loss of control on a slick, snow-covered road, and a time window so narrow that it should have been solvable. In the immediate aftermath, efforts focused on the most logical assumption, that she was close by. Officers searched the area. The roadway was checked in both directions. The nearby vicinity was canvassed. The problem investigators ran into, publicly discussed again and again, is that the scene did not yield the kind of clean trail people expect. There was no definitive, publicly confirmed path of footprints leading away into the woods that could be followed to a clear end. And there was no confirmed witness who could say, with certainty, "I watched her leave in that direction," or "I saw her get into that car." That absence doesn't prove any single theory by itself, but it explains why the case has never settled. The road offered two terrifying possibilities at once. The first is simple exposure. A person panics, leaves the car, and tries to avoid police or embarrassment, only to succumb to the elements. The second is just as simple, but far darker. A person leaves the car and, in the worst possible 10-minute window, encounters someone willing to exploit the isolation of the road. The night's timeline can accommodate either, which is exactly why it keeps generating arguments and why it keeps resisting closure. What happens next in any normal story is that the missing driver turns up quickly, cold, embarrassed, hiding at a nearby house, or walking along the shoulder. That did not happen. Emergency response continued, the vehicle was dealt with, and the scene was cleared as the hours passed. But Maura did not reappear. Later reports and case summaries noted details discovered in or around the vehicle that added unsettling texture, such as evidence that some attempt may have been made to affect the car's operation, including the frequently cited discovery of a rag stuffed into the tailpipe, a detail that has fueled debate about whether it was meant to reduce smoke, create a reason the car wouldn't start, or was simply an improvised attempt to manage the immediate situation. The important point for this chapter is not to overinterpret those details, because small details can be bent to fit any theory. The important point is that none of them answered the only question that mattered. Where did Maura go in the minutes after the crash? By the following day, the language hardened from accident to missing person, and the case entered the category it has never left, an unresolved disappearance anchored to one rural curve in the road. That curve is why the case still feels so sharp decades later. There is a timestamp for the call reporting the crash. There is a narrow window before police. After Maura Murray vanished from the crash scene on Route 112, the case immediately split into two parallel realities: what could be proven and what people could only infer. What could be proven was simple and brutal. Her car was there. The crash had happened. A brief window existed between the last reported sighting at the scene and the officer's arrival. And when police arrived, Maura was not present. What could only be inferred, almost everything else, became the engine that has driven the case for more than 2 decades. In the earliest hours, investigators treated the situation the way many officers would treat a stranded driver call on a winter night. First assumption, the driver is nearby. Second assumption, the driver may have left to avoid trouble. Third assumption, Something went wrong before help arrived. Search efforts began with the most logical radius because the road itself suggested limits. Deep cold, darkness, snowbanks, wooded terrain, scattered homes, and a narrow shoulder that offered nowhere obvious to go without being seen. The immediate question was whether Maura walked away. If she walked, she would have had to choose between two risks: staying on the road where passing cars might see her, or stepping into darkness and snow where minutes could turn dangerous. That tension, visibility versus exposure, defined the earliest search logic. In the days that followed, search teams expanded outward. The focus remained anchored to the crash site because it was the last indisputable point on the map. The roadway was checked in both directions. Nearby houses were approached, and the surrounding area was combed in widening rings. But there was no single, clean trail that ended the mystery, no definitive public confirmation of where she went next, and no verified sighting that could be stamped as the beginning of a new timeline. The Saturn itself became the second scene, the only place that might explain intent. Inside, officers documented what appeared to be signs of a disrupted trip, evidence of alcohol connected to the vehicle, items that suggested she had been traveling with personal belongings, and the general impression of a young person who had packed enough to be away for a short time, not long enough to disappear permanently. The presence of alcohol, in particular, shaped early speculation because it created a simple human motive for flight: fear of getting in trouble. On a winter road at night, after a crash, a young driver might panic and avoid police, especially if she believed she could be charged with something. That interpretation did not require a villain. It only required fear and poor judgment. It also did not require her to go far, only far enough to be out of sight when the cruiser pulled in. But that simple explanation collided with an equally simple counterpoint. Fear does not erase a person. Even if Maura left to avoid police, she still had to end up somewhere. A person who walks away in the cold should leave a trail, find shelter, seek a ride, knock on a door, or be seen again. The case refused to produce that next step. As the investigation widened, attention returned to the hours before the crash, because that was where the clearest evidence of intention existed. Earlier that same day, Maura had sent messages indicating she would be away for about a week for a family emergency, a claim later contradicted by relatives. She had withdrawn cash at an ATM and been seen on surveillance. She had purchased alcohol at a nearby store, also captured on surveillance. She had left Amherst in the late afternoon, and her last recorded cell phone activity was limited to routine actions like checking messages. Those details mattered because they suggested planning, not randomness, yet the plan itself remained invisible. No confirmed destination, no confirmed reservation, no confirmed person waiting for her. The absence of a destination has haunted the case because it creates two conflicting narratives that can both fit the same facts. Narrative 1. She intended to take a short break, clear her head, and return, and something happened in the last minutes that prevented her from ever coming back. Narrative 2. She intended to step away from her life, at least temporarily, and the crash was either an interruption she needed to solve quickly or part of the reason she vanished. The car offered another detail that became famous because it seemed, at first, like a coded message. A rag reportedly found in the tailpipe. In isolation, it reads like sabotage or staging. Later, it was explained as a practical trick her father had advised, something meant to reduce visible exhaust smoke and avoid being stopped by police for a car that looked like it was burning oil. That explanation did not solve the disappearance, but it showed how easily a strange-looking detail can be misread when the larger truth is missing. In the end, the Maura Murray case leaves one image that refuses to fade: a stranded car on a dark winter road, a brief reported interaction, and then a silence so complete it swallows every explanation. If she walked into the woods, the wilderness kept her secret. If she entered a passing vehicle, the road never gave up a name. And if she chose to disappear, she did so without leaving a verified trace of the life she supposedly continued. That is why the case still grips people decades later. It offers a timeline that feels solvable, but withholds the one fact that would make it solvable. What happened in those minutes after the crash? For investigators, it remains a file defined by gaps. For the family, it remains a wound that never gets the closure of certainty. For the public, it remains a mystery that keeps asking the same question in different ways. Somewhere between the last confirmed footage earlier that day and the moment police arrived on Route 112, Maura Murray's story turned into an absence. And until a definitive piece of evidence surfaces, something physical, something verified, something that cannot be argued away, this case will remain what it has been from the beginning. Not a legend, not a theory, but an unanswered disappearance. If you have a theory, focus on the one detail you believe matters most. The minutes, the road, the cold, the possibility of a ride, or the possibility of panic. Because in mysteries like this, the truth is usually simple, but finding it is not. If you want more real cases like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. New true stories drop here all the time. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happened in those minutes after the crash? Did she walk into the woods? Did she get into a passing car? Or was it panic that changed everything? Drop your theory in the comments. Be specific. One detail you think matters most. And if you know any credible information about the case, report it to the proper authorities.